Ayan, so good morning. Good morning grade 8 students at sa mga interested na umattend ng ating online class. We still have 10 minutes before we officially start our live stream. So just make sure lamang po na nakapag-breakfast na kayo at meron kayong baong tubig na katabi para at least once na nauho kayo, you can drink while you are watching the live stream. So before we start, let me check my and audio. So for audio, yung audio ko ay okay naman. Yan. So before we start, let's have some quick science news. On Friday, yan. So sa Biyernes po mararanasan po o may experience ng ating bansa ang isang partial lunar eclipse. So sa mga nag-grade 7 dyan, na ituro na sa inyo kung anong ibig sabihin ng partial lunar eclipse. And when we say partial lunar eclipse, the Earth is the one who will cast a shadow o siya yung magpo-produce ng shadow na tatama sa ating buwan. Okay? Unfortunately, it's not like the other previously experienced ng mga lunar eclipses natin. Yung may experience natin sa Friday is just a partial lunar eclipse. So ibig sabihin may konting bahagi pa ng ating buwan na hindi tatamaan ng anino ng ating planeta. So kung dati na-experience natin yung super talagang pulang-pula yung buwan, sa Friday, na-experience natin parang meron pa siyang kaunting slice na kulay puti. Another unfortunate thing about this eclipse ay masyadong mababa sa ating horizon. Ibig sabihin, halos pag-angat pa lang ng buwan, makikita na natin dapat yung ating lunar eclipse. Unfortunately, masyado siyang mababa sa ating horizon, kaya medyo challenging ito sa part natin. Okay? To be specific, let me check some details. At around 5:22 moonrise, ibig sabihin aangat na sa horizon yung ating buwan, maximum lunar eclipse na siya. Okay, almost nandun na siya sa maximum niya. And by 5:26 with just almost 4 minutes, may experience natin yung maximum eclipse. Yun nga lang sabi ko nga masyado siyang mababa sa horizon, so it will be a very challenging task na makita natin ito in its full glory. And by 6:05, almost 30 minutes after, magsisimula na yung partial lunar eclipse. Ito yung mas maganda kasi may kita talaga nating nababawasan yung anino na tumatama sa ating buwan. So yan po, pakiabangan po natin yan. It's very safe to look at directly sa ating lunar eclipse kasi hindi naman siya katulad ng solar eclipse na delikado sa ating mata. Kaya lang, laging paalala ng ating pamahalaan, you still need to follow the IATF protocols. Huwag kayong magkaroon ng malaking gathering just to view this lunar eclipse. Pwede nyo siyang i-view sa loob ng inyong mga tahanan, sa inyong mga bintana, if that is possible. Pero iwasan po natin ang pagkakaroon ng crowd once you watch this lunar eclipse. Again, this lunar eclipse will be observed sa ating bansa November 19, 2021, Friday 5:26 hanggang alas 8 ng gabi. So I hope you have a little bit of your time to watch this lunar eclipse. So before we start, we still have almost let me check my time lang. Ayan. So salamat po sa mga umattend na. Let me just post. Ayan, ang ating first na nag-attend. Ayan, from Darwin. Ayan, good morning. Good morning po sa mga nag-comment na ng kanilang name. Again, this is not a voluntary activity. So kung sino lang po may kakayahang maka-attend ng ating online class or live streaming, walang problema po sa akin. Sa mga hindi makaka-attend, I will provide the PDF file mamaya, and also the live stream will still be available sa ating YouTube Prism YouTube channel rather. So let me check lang yung audio ko kung okay siya. Baka kasi nagkakaroon ng technical difficulties. Yan. And audio. So for audio, yung audio ko ay okay naman. And by 5 minutes... Ayan, malinaw naman pala yung audio ko. So, good morning. So, within our online class mamaya sa live streaming, meron po tayong mga review questions. So, we will just use the comment box or comment section ng ating live stream or ng ating YouTube interface para dun kayo mag-post ng inyong mga sagot. If you have questions, just post a comment with your name and me as your teacher facilitator will address it shortly. Okay? And the links for the activities and learning resources will be posted in our subject FB group. Actually, sinasabi ng mga former biotech students ko, this would be one of the hardest topic ng biotech Actually, baka ito nga ay nasa top 1 eh. Kaya ginawa ko siya part 1 at part 2. Hinati ko yung lesson natin kasi baka malunod kayo sa part 1 pa lang. So hinati ko po yung topic natin. For this morning, we're going to have at least the first half. Then bukas po, yung bukas ng hapon, alas 2 ng hapon, will be all about the main processes or the main stages of cellular respiration. Sa totoo lang, itong module na ito is kasama pa siya sa first quarter. Kaya lang napansin ko na parang masyado siyang siniksik sa isang module. Sa totoo lang, kung mapapansin nyo, kung mabubuklat niyo yung module ninyo para sa biotechnology, yung cellular transport at saka itong cellular respiration ay pinagsama sa isang module. And as far as we know, yung cellular transport is also one of the hardest na na-experience natin nung first quarter. Pinagsama pa siya sa pinakamahirap na topic. Kaya ang ginawa ko, i-move ko na lang siya sa second quarter, which is actually parang mas napansin ko mas tama siya, mas related kasi siya sa lesson natin sa mga susunod na mga linggo. By next week, we're going to have fermentation, then microbiology, and human immunity. So yan. We still have 5 minutes. Please invite your classmates to attend our class. Ayan, show ko lang po yung mga uma-attend na ng ating class. Please, sa mga gusto na magbagong buhay sa biotech, please umattend na po kayo. I know my subject is really hard. By survey, by word of the mouth, pinakamahirap na nga daw to sa STE natin. So please, kung makaka-attend po tayo, is umattend po tayo. Now, okay, yan. Thank you sa mga umattend na ng ating online class. We still have 4 minutes. By 9 o'clock, we will officially start our class. So please make sure, please make yourself comfortable sa mga pwesto ninyo. Ayan, check lang natin. Yan, another good news. Binaba na ng ating IATF, ng ating national government, na sa alert level 1, 2, and 3 na lang po papayagan ng face shield. So graduate na po tayo sa pagsuot ng face shield. Pero hindi ibig sabihin na hindi tayo gagamit ng face shield ay pwede na tayong mag-crowd or magtipon-tipon sa isang confined space. Kung maaari po, hanggat maaari, iwasan pa rin po natin yung pagpunta sa mga malls, sa mga crowded places, mga ganyan, kasi hindi pa rin tapos po ang pandemya. And also, I want to thank my students, our STE students, na nagkaroon na ng time para magpabakuna, mapa-first dose, complete dose, or completely vaccinated. You're part now of the herd immunity na gusto nating i-achieve sa ating bansa. Currently, nasa 30% na yata ng ating eligible population ang vaccinated. So thank you sa mga nagpabakuna na. At alam ko sa ating paaralan ay may mga nakaschedule na po sa pagpapabakuna. So I think ID lang yata ang kailangan, and obviously your parents should come with you. So kung makausap niyo ang parent niyo, you can ask them to join you and to be vaccinated. Okay? Iba pa rin po yung nakakatulong ka sa pag-achieve natin ng herd immunity. Ayan, paalala lang po ulit, hindi pa tapos po ang pandemya. Hindi po to oras para magpunta ng mall, mag-crowds, magbuo ng crowd sa isang lugar. We still need to follow the IATF protocols. Tinanggal lang po yung face shield, no? So you still need to wear your mask, maintain social distancing, be healthy, yan. So para iwas pa rin po tayo sa sakit at sa COVID, okay? So we still have 2 more minutes. So sana po mapadami pa po natin. Currently, we still have 17. Sana po yung mga nangangailangan po talagang umattend, maka-attend po sila. Because the grades that I will give you is the final grade for first grading period. It's unappealable. Okay? So yan. May dalawa pa rin pong performance task kayong abangan sa second grading period. Yung isa, secret ko muna. Sa January ko na siya i-announce. So lesson muna tayo hanggang December. The last lesson natin will be December 15, I think. Will be the last online class natin for second grading period. Okay, so last minute. So sit back and relax. Make yourself comfortable sa mga pwesto ninyo, sa mga umaten. Thank you. Please invite your classmates sa mga gustong attend ng mga senior high school. This one is also included sa General Biology 1 and 2 ng inyong mga subjects. So please make time to attend kasi for sure makakatulong din po sa inyo itong na ito. And also, aside from that one, let me announce lang po sa aking mga grade 8 STE students na lahat ng files will be uploaded eventually sa ating Facebook group. Ito po ay para maiwasan ang paulit-ulit na pagtatanong, Sir, nasaan po yung file? Nasaan po yung activity sheet? I-upload ko po lahat yon. Pakibuksan lang po ang mga comment section ng bawat post para wala pong problema. Also, last announcement before we officially start. Mamaya pong hapon, alas 2 ng hapon, sa Prism YouTube channel, magkakaroon pa rin po tayo ng live stream naman po para sa Grade 8 Science. Ang topic po natin ay faults and earthquakes. So that will be our lesson number 1 for Grade 8 Science. So attend pa rin po tayo mamaya. Yan, saktong 9 o'clock na. So I will now just give me probably 15 seconds so that I can share properly. Yan, my screen. So let me check my screen sa may aking YouTube. Baka hindi pa visible. Yan. Wait lang natin na mag-flash totally yung aking screen. Yan. Check ko rin yung live chat kasi baka dyan kayo nagpo-post ng inyong mga sagot. Ayan, so good morning again, grade 8 ST students and those who are still interested to learn more about cellular respiration. This will be our lesson number 1 for second grading period, which is all about cellular respiration. Again, I'm your teacher facilitator for this live stream, for this online class, Mr. Marin Rodrigo D. Marins III of Science Department of Prensa National High School. So without further ado, let's start now. Focusing, what is cellular respiration? So this will be our topic outline. So number 1, we have metabolism, followed by ATP, which is actually paulit-ulit na po natin siyang discuss o nababanggit ng first grading period. So ano nga ba itong ATP na ito? And number 3, we have mitochondrion. So we will discuss deeply ano nga ba itong structure ng mitochondrion and what makes it so special para i-produce or para isagawa itong proseso na ito. Then we are going to discuss, I think this would be the part 2, itong number 4, yung cellular respiration, which will be divided into 3 major topics. We have glycolysis, Krebs cycle, and oxidative phosphorylation via electron transport chain. So medyo mahaba yung number 4 na yan. So get ready for part number 2 tomorrow. So simulan na natin. So what is metabolism? So madalas nating naririnig yan pag nag-exercise tayo, nagda-diet. Ano nga ba ibig sabihin itong metabolism na ito? So many chemical reactions and processes in your cells are ongoing. So right at this moment, kahit nakaupo kayo sa harap ng inyong mga devices, ng inyong mga computer, your body is actually performing so many chemical reactions and processes. Okay? In these chemical processes, itong mga macromolecules na diniscuss natin ng first quarter, yan yung rason ko kung bakit ko diniscuss yung macromolecules kahit wala siya sa mismong milks, is that, di ba macromolecules natin, we have the carbohydrates, the proteins, the nucleic acid, mga ganyan, kasama na rin natin si lipids, they are being assembled, binubuo, and they're also being broken down, pinag-iiwa-hiwalay. So, ibig sabihin nito mga chemical reaction na ito, it's not just creating a substance, it's also breaking down substances. So, itong mga substances na to can be transported across cell membrane and can also be transmitted eventually sa mga next generation natin. So from the tip of your head hanggang sa tip ng inyong mga daliri sa paa, napakaraming chemical reactions na nagaganap sa mga cells natin. Kasi pag tinanong natin ang mga sarili natin, even ng elementary, pag tinanong kayo ano yung mga chemical reactions sa katawan ninyo, una nyo sasabihin is digestion. Yes, that's true. Digestion is a chemical process sa ating katawan, but it is just one part of so many types of chemical reactions na meron sa ating katawan. Now, so in relation to this metabolism or these chemical processes na to, you should also be familiar with the laws of thermodynamics. Sa lumang science curriculum, sinasama ito sa grade 10 science. Kay aga 40 years science bali sa physics. So there are two laws of thermodynamics. The first one is that the law of conservation of energy, which I think na-discuss na siya nung first grading period natin sa Science 8. Nung diniscuss ng inyong mga teachers yung work, energy, and power. And when we say law of conservation of energy, it states that energy can be converted from one form to another, but it cannot be created or destroyed. Nandyan na talaga yung energy na yan. Ang tanging gagawin lang natin dyan is to convert from one form to another form. So just like, let me use a laser pointer. Just like in this diagram, we have light and heat energy from our sun. It will be converted to chemical energy by plants through photosynthesis. And once we eat these plants, the energy can be converted to mechanical, in this case, kinetic energy. So the energy here is just being converted from one form to another. Hindi siya nabubuo out of the blue. Nandiyan na talaga siya. It is just being converted from one form to another. So let's have a review. True or false? Paki-ready na po yung comment section natin. The statement here is, energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It can only be transformed or converted from one form into another. So please use the comment section para sa inyong sagot. Again, the statement is, energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It can only be transformed from one form into another. So I will wait for your answer. Ayan. So medyo delayed, I think, ng 10 seconds yung ating live stream. Kaya yan, may mga nagsasagot na. Tingnan natin kung tama kaya ang sagot nila. Again, energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It can only be transformed from one form into another. So yan. The answer is true. So kakasabi ko lang po kanina, itatransform siya, i-convert lang siya from one form into another. So let's proceed. All of these cellular activities na binabanggit natin kanina requires energy. Okay? Kailangan lagi ng energy. And based from what we have discussed sa grade 8 science ng first grading period, when we say energy, it is the ability to do work. So without energy, we cannot do work on the first place. Okay? And when we say thermodynamics, it is the study of the flow and transformation of energy in the universe. So even sa ating mga cells, there is energy transformation. Kasi baka ang akala niyo pag sinabi nating energy transformation, it's on a macro scale. From light energy from the sun turns into food, turns into energy that we can use to move, like that. Pero sa totoo lang, sa mismong cell pa lang natin, meron na nagaganap na mga energy transformation. Okay? Some of them can be converted to heat, to chemical energy, to kinetic energy, so on and so forth. At lahat ng uri ng energy na yan. Diba? In some organisms pa, they can also produce their own light. They can also produce their own electricity. Diba? Yung mga electric eels, yung mga bioluminescent organisms. So, yung mga energy transformation na yan is occurring from cell to cell. Kada cell ng ating katawan ng isang organism. So, the second law states that energy cannot be converted without the loss of usable energy. So, laging may nasasayang na energy. Hindi siya nawawala totally, kasi hindi nga pwedeng mawala, di ba? It's just converted into another form na hindi natin siya magagamit. The energy that is lost is generally converted to thermal energy. Kaya mapapansin nyo sa mga diagrams natin sa biology, for example, kumain ka ng, kung naituro ito ng grade 7 science sa inyo sa ecology, sa second grading period sa biology, kung na-discuss sa inyo na yung energy from the sun will be converted by the producers o yung mga plants na yan, pero hindi lahat ng energy na yon ay nagagamit or naipapasa sa susunod trophic level. For example, kinain natin yung damo, kinain natin yung gulay, hindi naman 100% makukuha natin yung energy ng halaman na yan. It's just 10% lamang ng energy na produce ng isang organism ang maipapasa sa susunod na trophic level. And what happens to the other energy? Some of the energy is lost through heat. So yung init na lumalabas sa ating katawan, it's just a lost energy. Nasasayang lang siya na energy na hindi natin nagagamit. So in this case, the term here, the entropy, is the measure of disorder or unusable energy in a system. Okay? So let's see this diagram. So the first law of energy, yun nga, first law of thermodynamics, sinasabi lang natin yung energy transformation from one form to another form. Pero sa second law of thermodynamics, every time that we are undergoing or we are performing a certain chemical process, some of the energy is lost through heat. Nasasayang siya, na ilalabas siya ng ating katawan sa pamamagitan ng init. Kaya kahit anong gawin mo, di ba pag hinawakan mo ang balat mo, if you're still alive, you can still feel the heat, yung init na yan. So yung init na yan is actually one of the signs na may chemical process na nagaganap sa ating katawan. Okay? So just like this bear, so once it's breathing out CO2, yung mga digestion, yung mga processes na katawan yan, some of them will be released as heat. So this first law and second law of thermodynamics will work hand in hand to make ourselves alive. Okay? Obviously. Okay? So all organisms need energy to live. That's a fact. So lahat ng organism na meron tayo kailangan ng energy. Okay? So saan galing yung energy na yan? This energy may be directly or indirectly coming from the sun. Pwede nating direktang nakakakuha tayo ng energy from the sun. For example, you're a plant. You're an autotroph. So when we say autotrophs, these are organisms that make their own food. So pwede nilang kunin or gamitin, i-convert yung energy na mula sa ating araw directly into their system. Pero tayong mga heterotrophs, we are organisms that needs to ingest food to obtain energy. Indirectly napapakinabangan natin yung energy na galing sa ating araw. Kasi once we eat the plant material na nag-undergo ng photosynthesis, yung energy na nasa kanila can be passed through our body. So indirectly, directly or indirectly, lahat ng energy ng ating organisms will be coming from the sun. So sun is the main source of energy here on our planet. So, true or false? Half of the energy that is used on our planet comes from the sun indirectly. Half of the energy that is used on our planet comes from the sun indirectly. So please key in your answer sa ating comment section. Again, kalahati daw ng energy ng ating planeta comes from the sun indirectly. Ayan, magkakaiba na sila ng sagot. Tingnan natin. Half of the energy that is used on our planet comes from the sun indirectly. The answer is false. Okay? Sa totoo lang, hindi lang siya half, it's more than half of the energy. At saka hindi rin sa indirectly, it's also directly and indirectly. So medyo maraming confusing terms na nilagay ako sa statement na yan. So but definitely at the end of the day, our sun will be the main source of energy here on our planet directly or indirectly ang paraan mo pa man ng kumuha ng energy. Okay, so that should be clear. But there are some organisms, there are some exceptions na may mga organism tayo na natagpuan sa ilalim ng dagat, they do not have the direct access to sunlight. They will be part of the indirect access sa sun na yan. So still, at the end of the day, it's still the sun, the main source of energy sa ating planeta. So all of the chemical reactions in a cell are referred to as cell's metabolism. So pag pinagsama-sama natin lahat ng chemical reaction na nagaganap sa isang cell, sa isang organism, that will be referred to as our metabolism. So a series of chemical reaction in which the product of one reaction is the substrate for the next reaction is called the metabolic pathway. So pag sinabi nating metabolic pathway, it's a series of chemical reaction. Ibig sabihin yung ingredients ng isa ay rather yung product ng unang reaction will be the ingredient of the next reaction. At yung product ng second reaction will be the ingredient of the third reaction. So tuloy-tuloy lang po yan. So we can say that all of the metabolic pathways or the chemical processes ng ating katawan, they are all interconnected. Magkakadugtong po yan. Hindi po yan stand-alone. So if you still recall yung diniscuss sa inyo, probably nung grade 6 kayo, yung mga human body systems natin, I hope na ang pagkakadiscuss sa inyo is holistic. Ibig sabihin that all of the structures, all of the processes ng ating katawan, they are all interconnected. So once we digest food, yung mga nutrients na yan will be delivered or transported throughout our body through the circulatory system. And once na may energy na yung mga food na yan, yung mga muscular system natin gagana, it will work hand in hand with the skeletal system, it will transmit, all those things will be interconnected. Paano gagalaw yung muscle will be connected to our brain like that. So all of the chemical reaction that's happening on our body is called the metabolism. And they are all involved in a metabolic pathway. So may dalawang uri tayong metabolic pathway. We have the catabolic and the anabolic pathway. So anong pinagkaiba ng catabolic at anabolic? So the relationships of this anabolic and catabolic pathway results in the continual flow of energy within an organism. So right at this moment, habang nakaupo tayo sa harap ng ating mga devices, our body is simultaneously doing some anabolic and catabolic pathways or catabolic and anabolic reactions. So sabay-sabay yan, may mga sa isang part ng katawan mo, sa isang part ng cell mo, nag-undergo siya ng anabolic reaction, sa ibang parts ng katawan mo, catabolic naman. So sabay-sabay na yan nagaganap kasi it's part of our life eh. So it's part of the living system ng ating katawan. So when we say catabolic pathway, this releases energy by breaking down larger molecules into smaller molecules. Kasi dito sa ating diagram, these bonds between this particle ng isang molecule contains energy. So para mabuo ang isang bond, kailangan natin ng energy. And once na sinira mo yung mga bonds na yan, we are also releasing energy. And once na sinira natin yung mga bonds na yan, yung large molecules natin will be smaller molecule. One best example ng catabolic pathway natin is digestion. So once we eat large, obviously food materials natin, malaking macromolecules yan, once na kinain natin yan at na-digest yan, it will be degraded or it will be decomposed into smaller molecules. And once the smaller molecules are now formed, may kasabay rin siyang pag-release ng energy. So maliwanag tayo dyan sa catabolic pathway. It releases energy by breaking down larger molecules into smaller molecules. Napakasimple ng definition. Pag binreak down natin yung malaking molecule, syempre madudurog siya, liliit yung mga molecules natin or yung mga particles natin maghihiwa-hiwalay. And once na nangyari yan, magpo-produce tayo ng energy. The other way around, anabolic reaction is the total opposite naman ng catabolic pathway. Pag sinabi nating anabolic pathway, it uses the energy released by catabolic pathway to build larger molecules from smaller molecules. So sa anabolism, yung mga nadurog nating mga molecules, yung napag-iwahiwalay natin mga particles ng isang molecule, ng isang malaking molecule, through the help of this energy, will be combined into larger molecules. Sa ating katawan, may nagaganap na mga ganyang anabolic reaction. For example, the build-up of glycogen sa ating mga muscles kapag sobra-sobra yung glucose sa ating katawan. So that is one example ng anabolic reaction because glucose are smaller subunits, malilit na molecules yan. And through this anabolic pathway, pwede siyang pagsamasamahin para makabuo ng long chains of glycogen that can be stored on our liver. Okay? Ano pa ba? I think that would be the best example para sa anabolic pathway, you know. So when we have smaller molecules, it can be clumped up to create a larger molecules. So yun pinagkaiba ng anabolic at catabolic. Napakasimple, napaka-basic ng pagkakaiba ng anabolic at catabolic pathway. So let's have a review. Catabolic pathways store energy by breaking down larger molecules into smaller molecule. Again, the statement, catabolic pathways store energy by breaking down larger molecules into smaller molecules. Tingnan natin. Please have time to read the statement again. Catabolic pathway store energy by breaking down larger molecules into smaller molecules. The answer is, hala, puro true ang sagot nila. Ba't naging false, sir? Basahin natin yung statement ulit. Catabolic pathway stores energy by breaking down larger molecules into smaller molecules. Diba? So yung catabolic pathway does not store. It releases energy. So the answer for that one is false. Yan ha. Ulitin ko ha. Kaya mali po yung sagot nyo na true Hindi po siya store. It should be, let me highlight, hindi siya dapat store. It should be, let me release. Yan. Yan ang nagpamali doon sa statement. It should be catabolic pathway release energy by breaking down larger molecules into smaller molecules. So the answer for the statement is false. Next statement. Anabolic pathways build larger molecules from smaller molecules. True or false? The next statement, anabolic pathways build larger molecules from smaller molecules. Yan, may mga tingnan natin. Again, the statement is anabolic pathways build larger molecules from smaller molecules. The answer for this one is true. So, sa anabolic pathway natin, from large makakabuo tayo ng malalaking molecules mula sa malilit na molecules sa tulong ng energy. So, nai-store yung energy. Dito nag-i-store ng energy sa mga bonds. Ayan na, huwag tayong malito sa catabolism at anabolism or anabolic and catabolic pathways natin. So, let's proceed. So, ito yung example. This is the diagrammatic representation ng isang metabolic pathways. Metabolic pathway begins with a specific molecule which is then altered in a series of defined steps, resulting in a certain product. Each step of the pathway is catalyzed by a specific coenzymes. So, as you can see here, sa ating diagram, let me use a laser pointer again. We have here a starting molecule. And after reaction 1, with the help of enzyme 1, we are going to produce product B. In this case, product B is not anymore the product. It will be used now as a raw material for the reaction number 2. With the help of enzyme 2, you're going to have product C. And once this product C undergoes another reaction, it will become the ingredient or the raw material to produce product D. So, ibig sabihin si B at C is just an intermediate product. Ibig sabihin, hindi siya talaga yung final product ng ating process. It is just part of a series of processes before we arrive with the final product. So, mapapansin niyo yan sa ating discussion eventually sa cellular respiration na we have a starting molecule and we have lots and lots of steps between the raw material and the product itself. Sa totoo lang, may isang part pa nga doon na 10 steps bago natin ma-arrive yung final product. Sa isang step, 8 steps ang kailangan. 8 reactions ang kailangan maganap para ma-achieve natin yung final product. So it's a very long process. Kaya talagang ihiwalay natin siya ng lesson. Now, so, babalikan natin itong diagram na to. As you can see here, each of the reactions, meron siyang kaakibat na enzyme. Okay? So, for example, A to B, for reaction 1, we have enzyme 1. So, when we say enzyme, it's a macromolecule. Actually, it's an example. Majority of enzymes are proteins. Okay? These are proteinaceous substances that acts as a catalyst. And when we say catalyst, pinakamadaling sabihin natin dyan is tagapagpasimula at tagapag-trigger ng isang chemical reaction. But in a chemical sense, when we say catalyst, it's a chemical agent that speeds up a chemical reaction without being consumed by the reaction. So hindi talaga siya kasama sa chemical reaction. For example here, sucrose with the addition of water and with the help of the enzyme sucrase can actually mag-decompose yan into glucose and fructose. So, sumama ba si sucrase sa reaction natin? Hindi. It is just a helper. Tumulong lang siya para mapaghiwalay natin yung units o ng subunits ng sucrose. So, maliwanag sa reaction na yan. Without being consumed by the reaction, hindi siya humahalo sa isang reaction. It will just help. It is just a helping hand para ma-digest, ma-decompose natin ang isang larger molecule. Or in other way around, pwede mong pagbaliktad. Enzyme speeds up metabolic reaction by lowering energy barriers. So, mas pinapababa niya yung energy consumption ng isang chemical reaction. Just like in this diagram, this black line shows the amount of energy na kailangan para mabuo natin from the reactants yung ating products. But with the help of enzymes, mapapansin nyo yung red line here, di hamak na mas kaunting energy ang kailangan natin para magawa yung reaction. So mas maraming natitipid na energy yung ating cell, aside from energy, mas mabilis din. Within a shorter period of time, ma-achieve natin kagad yung product na yan. So ibig sabihin, enzyme is a big player sa mga discussions natin sa mga susunod na araw. Because these enzymes speeds up, pinabibilis niya yung ating reaction, and also mas pinapababa niya yung energy na kailangan para isagawa ang isang reaction. So don't be confused, madalas sa mga enzymes will end with a suffix na ase. Most of them. May mga mangilan-ngilan na mga enzyme na hindi sumusunod sa ganitong suffixes. Pero, yun ang keyword natin dyan, or clue. Pag may nakita kang substance sa biology or chemistry book na ase ang dulo, most probably that is an enzyme. So, pampabilis at pampaunti ng energy ang ating enzyme. Mas nakakatipid ang cell natin with the help of these enzymes. So to give you an sabi natin a perspective sa ating metabolism, so photosynthesis is an example of anabolic pathway. And when we see anabolic pathway, smaller molecules to larger molecules. So sa photosynthesis, light energy from the sun is converted to chemical energy for the use of by the cell. So as you can see here, ito yung mga smaller molecules natin, CO2 plus H2O. They're small molecules. But undergoing photosynthesis, magkakaroon ng rearrangement, ng mga several processes na ganyan, they will form lots and lots of bonds. They will form a larger molecules, which most of the time, sugar or starch. Okay? So, di hamak na mas malaki yan. So, maliwanag na yung photosynthesis natin is an example of a anabolic pathway. Smaller molecules to larger molecules. Now, yung focus natin sa araw na ito or sa umaga na ito will be cellular respiration. And cellular respiration is a catabolic pathway in which organic molecules are broken down to release energy for use by the cell. So yung mga organic molecules na yan yung mga raw materials natin para makapaggawa tayo ng energy. And the byproduct of this cellular respiration is the raw material for the photosynthesis. So maliwanag po na yung connection between photosynthesis and cellular respiration, they are just two metabolic pathways na magkaugnay. Because as you can see here, the product of the first reaction, which is photosynthesis, will be the raw material for the second reaction, which is the cellular respiration. And the product of cellular respiration will now become the ingredient of the next reaction, which is photosynthesis again. So, yung photosynthesis cellular respiration na yan, mas madidiscuss sa inyo ng mabuti pagdating nyo ng grade 9. Okay? Actually, yung relasyon lang nila, yung connection ng dalawang processes na to. Pero sa grade 8 STE, mas pag-aaral natin ng malaliman itong cellular respiration na to na nagaganap sa ating mitochondria. So, let's have a review. Photosynthesis converts light energy to chemical energy. So, please use the comment section for your answer. Again, the statement is photosynthesis converts light energy to chemical energy. So I will wait for your answers sa comment section natin. Yan. Yan yung ating question. Ayan, may mga nagsasagot na. Photosynthesis converts light energy to chemical energy. Yan, so this one is very easy. Okay? So the answer for this one, photosynthesis converts light energy to chemical energy, and that is true. Light energy from the sun will be converted to chemical energy stored in the sugar that will be formed after this process. Cellular respiration is the catabolic pathway in which organic molecules are broken down to release energy for use by the cell. So again, cellular respiration is a catabolic pathway in which organic molecules are broken down to release energy for use by the cell. Yan, check lang natin yung sagot na. Ayan, wait natin. Ayan, may mga nagsasagot na. Cellular respiration is the catabolic pathway in which organic molecules are broken down to release energy for use by the cell. Check ko na yung audio ko, baka nagka... Yan, check lang natin yung sagot na yan. Wait natin ang mga nagsasagot na. Cellular respiration is the catabolic. The answer is, sorry. This one is a typographic error lang po ito. So let me check that one. Hindi lang po. Hanggasin na natin. Mali ako. Yan. The answer for this one is true. Sorry for that one. So the answer for this one, it's a catabolic pathway. Tama po kayo. Catabolic pathway. Ako po nagkamali sa paglagay ng sagot. Catabolic pathway is cellular respiration is a catabolic pathway in which organic molecules are broken down to release energy by the cell. So sorry for that one. So na-overlook ko yung paglagay ng animation. So tama po kayo. It's true. So, oops, sorry. Ayan, so we're now through with metabolism. So I hope you are now familiar with the different the laws of thermodynamics, the energy transformation, and how it actually makes all the cellular processes sa ating katawan works. So yung mga energy na yan is one of the main thing kung bakit gumagana yung mga cellular processes na yan. So ang next question dyan is, ano nga ba yung sinasabing energy na yan? So saan nga ba nanggagaling yung energy na yan? So maliwanag na sa amin, sir, na yung energy na yan cannot be created nor destroyed. It's just transformed. Pero on the first place, nasaan dyan nga ba yung mga energy na yan? So this is the reason why after this one, ang i-discuss natin is ATP. So ano nga ba itong ATP na ito? So before we discuss further what is ATP, a cell does three main kinds of work. Meron siyang tatlong gawain sa katawan o sa isang cell. The first one, it's a chemical process. It's a chemical work. So yung mga chemical reactions na nagaganap sa ating cell, it's part of this process. So para gumana yung mga different cellular processes natin na yan, yung mga chemical processes na yan, kailangan natin ng energy in the form of ATP. Number two, the next kind of work na ginagawa ng ating cell, it's a transport work. Na-discuss natin nung first grading period. Di ba there is a kind of transport called the active transport na kung saan gagana lang siya with the help of ATP. So directly, naaapektuhan ng ATP natin yung paggalaw ng mga molecules into and out of the cell. And the last work is called mechanical work. Yung movement ng mga vesicles, yung movement ng mga structures sa loob ng cell natin ay napapagana ng ATP. So chemical, transport, and mechanical work ang kayang paganahin or rather nagaganap sa loob ng ating cell. In living organisms, chemical energy is stored in biological molecules and can be converted to other forms of energy when needed. And that's the reason why, kung bakit kahit wala po siya sa MELCs natin, sa most essential learning competencies, isinama ko pa rin po sa lessons natin yung biological molecules. Kasi from time to time, babalikan natin yung mga biological molecules na yan. And this energy is actually being stored inside this biological molecule. So yung mga kinakain natin, yung mga food items na kinakain natin, meron siyang stored chemical energy. Kailangan lang natin siyang i-undergo or kailangan lang niyang sumailalim sa mga chemical processes para siya ay magamit ng ating katawan. So ano nga ba ulit yung mga macrobiological molecules na alam natin? So please use the comment section. Ano nga ba ulit yung mga biological molecules na diniscuss natin before? Anyone who can still recall? Please use the comment section to key in your answer. Ano nga ba yung mga biological molecules na diniscuss natin ng first grading period? Yan. So pakigamit lang po ang comment section natin. So thank you sa 29 students na currently viewing our online class. So again, please use the comment section. Ano nga ba yung mga biological molecules na diniscuss natin ng first grading period? Paki-type lang po sa comment section natin. What are those molecules? Ayan, may mga nagsasagot na. Ayan. What are those biological molecules? Ba't isa lang? Ba't puro yun lang sagot nyo? 4 yun. 4 yun, grade 8. Asan yung 3? Ano yung 3 na yun? Ano yung pa natitirang 3? Puro yan. What are those biological molecules that needs to be that stores this chemical energy and can be converted to one form and to another? Yan, may nagsagot na iba na. Yan. So, 3, isa na lang. Ano pa isa na biological molecule? Tama po kayo. The first one, kung ano pa yung talagang at last on the list, yung pang inuna nyo. So, we have lipids. Technically, hindi siya kasali kasi nga hindi siya nag-undergo ng stepwise polymerization. But in the sense, we can add this one kasi malaki naman siya at nagagamit ng mga cells natin. We also have carbohydrates, that's also correct, or polysaccharides. We also have nucleic acids, which we have the DNA. And the last, we'll have the protein. So, yung mga bonds, yung mga structures na nasa loob ng ating mga chemical molecule, mga molecules na yan, stores chemical energy. At yan na nagagamit natin eventually once na siya ginamit ng ating katawan. So, tama po kayo. We have lipids, carbohydrates, nucleic acids, and proteins. So in this case, pag-aaralan na natin ngayon yung napaka-importanting molecule na yan na paulit-ulit na natin binabanggit ng first grading period na sabi ko, tsaka na natin siya i-discuss. And this is now the right moment to discuss what is ATP. And when we say ATP, it's actually adenosine triphosphate. Okay? Let's have a quick vocabulary building. As you can see here sa ating word, we have tri. And tri means 3. So, ibig sabihin sa molecule ng ating ATP ay meron siyang 3 phosphate group. And phosphate group is a functional group, is a functional organic molecule that contains phosphorus and oxygen. So as you can see here on this diagram, at the end or sa dulo, sa tail ng ating structure, we are going to see here 3 phosphate group. So we have 1, 2, 3 phosphate group. Okay? And it is attached to this structure called adenosine. So it's the most important biological molecule that provides chemical energy sa ating mga cells. So from virtually halos lahat ng mga cellular processes natin will be using adenosine triphosphate. And we will see later saan at paano nabubuo at saan nagagamit ng ating cell yung adenosine triphosphate na yan. So let's have a review. There are 3 phosphates. There are 3 phosphate groups in adenosine triphosphate. True or false? Again, the statement, there are 3 phosphate group in adenosine triphosphate. So please, again, use the comment section. There are 3 phosphate group in adenosine triphosphate. The answer is true. From the word itself, triphosphate. Tri means 3. Phosphate is the phosphate groups that we are telling here. So sa adenosine triphosphate, we have 3 phosphate groups. At titingnan natin ba't nga ba importante yung phosphate groups na yan. So ATP is a multi-purpose storehouse of chemical energy. So ibig sabihin, marami siyang gamit. So sa loob ng ating cell natin, virtually almost all of those energy requiring process will eventually need ATP. ATP is the most abundant energy carrier molecule. Meron pang ibang uri like GTP, kaya hindi na siya ganun kasi i-interconvert din siya eventually. So pinaka-abundant, pinaka-common na energy carrier molecule sa ating cells is actually our ATP. It's a carrier molecule, energy carrier kasi sa mismong structure niya, nandun yung energy na kailangan natin para paganahin yung mga cellular processes na yan. Okay? So ito yung isang mas, sabihin natin, mas detailed structure ng ATP natin. So ano nga bang bumubuo sa ATP natin? ATP contains the sugar ribose. So this is your ribose. Itong slightly orange color na structure. So this is your ribose. Attached to a nitrogenous base called adenine. So this blue here, this two-ring structure is called adenine. Pag pinagsama natin ang adenine at ribose, we have adenosine. Let me use a pen. So this one, adenine plus ribose, you're going to have, let me use another color, you're going to end up with adenosine. Okay? So adenine plus ribose, you're going to get adenosine. So itong blue and orange structure na to, this is what we call the adenosine portion ng ating molecule. And attached to this adenosine, we have the three phosphate groups. And each of the bonds here is a high energy bond. Meron siyang daladalang energy. Di ba sabi ko nga kanina, every time that we are forming a molecule, those bonds stores energy. And in this case, this is not just a typical bond, it's a high energy bond. Okay? So, itong mga bonds na ito will be used later once na na-break natin yan, it can release lots and lots of energy na magagamit natin sa mga chemical reactions ng ating katawan. So, paano ka balik-baliktad na ito? Sandali Ayan. So at least we now have the idea, yung itsura ng ating adenosine triphosphate, yung ATP natin. So, paano nga ba nabubuo yung ating ATP or how it is actually being used up by our cell? So, this shuttling of inorganic phosphates and energy is called the ATP cycle. So, this diagram is what we call the ATP cycle. So, yung ATP cycle natin is binubuo ng dalawang proseso. An energy yielding, pag sinabing energy yielding, nakakapag-produce siya ng energy, and energy consuming, nakakagamit siya ng energy. So, dalawang bahagi ang ATP cycle natin. There is an exergonic and an endergonic process. So, let's go back to this diagram. Going back to this diagram. Yan. So, sa first part ng ating ATP cycle, sabi ko nga meron siyang exergonic, energy yielding, and we also have energy consuming. So, sa first part ng ating ATP cycle, let me see kung, ayun. Sa first part ng ating ATP cycle here, let me use a pen. Palit natin cool. Yan. Itong in a circle kong part na to, this one is the exergonic. Kasi nakakapag-yield tayo ng energy. Kasi ang mangyayari dito sa first part na to, yung ADP natin, o yung adenosine diphosphate, ibig sabihin dalawa lang yung phosphate molecule niya, will be added, idadagdag sa kanya yung phosphate group. Kaya magiging tatlo na yung phosphate group niya. And once this happen, magkakaroon tayo ng ATP, which we all know na meron siyang daladalang energy. Kaya energy yielding yung unang bahagi ng ating process. The other one naman is the energy consuming. Bakit? Kasi once na nagamit na siya ng cell, once na siya ay nagamit ng ating cell, yung ating energy na nasa ating ATP will now be released. Kaya endergonic na po yung process natin dito. So let me encircle this part. So yan. So this one is your endergonic process. Kanina, exergonic kasi yung energy na nasa ating cell will be incorporated sa pagbuo ng ATP natin through these bonds. And once na ginamit naman natin yung ATP na yan, mare-release yan, it will now be consumed by the cell, kaya siya ay endergonic or energy consuming process. So again, the ATP cycle is both an exergonic and endergonic process. So going into detail, yan, ATP releases energy. Yan. When the bond or phosphoanhydride bond, yung mga bonds sa pagitan ng ATP natin, kung babalikan natin, itong mga to, this is called the phosphoanhydride bond. Pag nasira siya, pinaghiwa-hiwalay natin siya, sinapchap natin siya, marirelease yung energy. And once na na-release yung energy na yan, ang ATP na yan will now become ADP plus inorganic phosphate or a free phosphate group. Kaya napansin nyo sa structure natin, sa cycle natin, we have ATP here plus water. You're going to end up maghihiwalay yung mahati, matatanggal yung isang phosphate group, and you're going to end up with adenosine diphosphate plus an inorganic or a free phosphate group. So paulit-ulit na makikita niyo yan sa mga processes na i-discuss natin, that your ATP will be used up para mabuo yung ADP na yan. At once naman nabubuin natin yung ATP, pabaliktad naman ang mangyayari natin yan. So kaya diniscuss ko po yung ATP cycle na ito. So yan, let's have a review. ATP releases energy when the bond between the first and second phosphate group are broken. Yan, tingnan natin. ATP releases energy when the bond between the first and second phosphate group are broken. True or false? Yan, may mga nagsasagot na ng ating question. Most of them or most of you are answering false. So tingnan natin ano kaya ang sagot dito sa ating question. So the answer for this one is false. Tama na nagre-release tayo ng energy kapag nababreak natin yung bond ng mga phosphate group, but it is not the first and the second phosphate group. It's actually the second and the third phosphate group. So kung babalikan natin yung structure, ito yung unang mababreak. Ito yung una. So this is your 1, 2, 3, the third phosphate group. So ito yung unang bond na masisira natin. Okay? So once na nasira yan, lalabas yung energy na yan. And going back to that question kanina, may nakita akong question sa ating comment section. Ano pong ibig sabihin ng shuttling? Yan, nasan ba yung shuttling na term? Nasan ba nabanggit yung shuttling? Napin na natin ha. In the shuttling of inorganic phosphate and energy, pag sinabi natin shuttling in this case is more of the cyclic connection between this inorganic phosphate and energy. So paulit-ulit tayo, pag shuttle, it's more on movement, transportation. So once na pinagsama natin, nag-shuttle tayo ng phosphate group, pinagsama natin sa ADP, you're going to form ATP. So it's more on movement or transport. So yan. So on the other way around, energy is now stored or phosphorylated in the phosphate bond form. Oops, sorry. Nagkaka-error yung audio. Sandali lang. Nag-error yung audio. Yan. Energy is stored naman kapag yung phosphate bond natin ay na-form kapag nakakuha tayo ng phosphate group mula sa ating cell. So in this case, as you can see here on this lower part of our diagram, pabaliktad naman yung process. Kanina pinaghiwalay natin, sinira natin yung second at third, yung bond between the second and third phosphate group. Sa statement naman ito, pabaliktad yung proseso natin. We are creating ATP. So from ADP, when we add a free phosphate group, we are going to form ATP. So napakasimple, ATP will be broken down to ADP plus PI or phosphate group. And once na pinagsama natin, pinabaligtad natin yung proseso na yun, you're going to end up with ATP. Ang process na ito ay tinatawag nating phosphorylation. Kanina, hydrolysis. Sorry, nasa ba yung highlighter? So this one is called phosphorylation. Phosphorylation because we are adding phosphate sa ating ADP. Kanina hydrolysis kasi gumagamit tayo ng water para i-degrade or i-decompose natin yung bonds ng ating ATP. So it's a phosphorylation and hydrolysis process. So yan. So yan po yung ATP cycle natin. So at least dapat ma-internalize ninyo na yung ATP and ADP will be cycling, will be shuttling around sa ating cell para magamit natin at actually pwede tayong makagamit ng energy or makabuo ng energy sa ating cellular respiration. So itong ATP cycle is again, it's both an exergonic or energy releasing and endergonic energy consuming process. So yan, let's move on. Kung kaya natin, discuss natin buo. Magkaroon na lang tayo ng review session bukas. Sige, pwede rin naman. So i-discuss natin, try natin i-discuss ng buo. Then bukas magkaroon tayo ng review session through an online class na lang sa Google Meet. So mitochondrion, ayan. So i-discuss na rin natin yung structure ng mitochondrion. Please, ito mga dinidiscuss ko po na ito is included sa inyong activity sheet number 1 for lesson number 1. So please, if you want to have a better grade na this time at mabawi niyo yung first grading period grading niyo, Sana po'y masagutan nyo ng maayos yung mga activities and quizzes natin. Yan, let's move on. Yan. Mitochondrion, it's a large double membrane organelle. Pag sinabi natin mitochondria, plural. Pag mitochondrion, singular. So maliwanag tayo dyan ha. So mitochondria are large double membrane organelle that are responsible for energy molecule production or simply cellular respiration in eukaryotes. Maliwanag tayo dyan ha. Walang mitochondria ang mga prokaryotes kasi on the first place, wala silang membrane structures or membrane-bound structure. Tayo lang pong mga eukaryotes ang merong mitochondria. Pero, di ba kung naalala ninyo ng first grading period, nabanggit natin sa cellular structure that there is a possibility, there is a theory telling us na ang ating mga mitochondria are once free-living bacteria nung bilyong taon na nakalilipas at na-incorporate lang siya sa ating first eukaryotes natin. Kaya siya siguro malaki at double membrane. Okay? So, theory pa lang naman yun, ni Lynn Margulis. This organelle is the site of the oxidative metabolism in the cell. So we can say that this mitochondria, it's a metabolic organelle. So, it's involved in a chemical process sa loob ng ating cell. And we will discuss later, ano nga ba yung metabolic process na yan na nangyayari sa ating cellular sa ating mitochondria. So when we say oxidative metabolism, the mitochondrion converts the product from breakdown of carbohydrates, fats, and proteins into chemical energy, and that can be stored in ATP. So ginawa lang nating technical yung term, pero pag sinabi nating oxidative metabolism, in this case, we're just forming or we're just creating ATP using a material like carbohydrate, fats, and proteins. Maliwanag tayo dyan ha, kasi ang nangyayari kasi most of the books will tell you that the main ingredient ng ating cellular respiration, it's always glucose, but there are also pathways na related sa cellular respiration that actually do not use carbohydrates or sugar or glucose. They can use fats and proteins in some sense. Pero sa ating discussion ngayong araw na ito, we will just be focusing on carbohydrates. So yung mga carbohydrates yan, to be specific, the glucose will be converted or the chemical energy stored in adenosine triphosphate. So yan po mangyayari sa ating oxidative metabolism na nagaganap sa ating mitochondrion. So ano nga ba yung mga structure na meron sa mitochondrion natin? So sabi ko nga po, it's a double membrane structure. So ibig sabihin meron siyang dalawang membrane. Simply called as outer mitochondrial membrane or simply outer membrane that is highly porous. Mas mabilis makadali dito yung mga products natin na kailangan sa cellular respiration. Kasi tandaan niyo, one part ng cellular respiration ay hindi nagaganap sa loob ng ating mitochondrion. It's actually happening outside the organelle. Ipapasa lang siya or some part of the process will be we will just enter the mitochondrion on the latter part of the process. So it's very advantageous na highly porous yung outer membrane natin. There are also integral proteins called porins. Kung naalala niyo yung structure ng plasma membrane natin, meron tayong mga integral proteins here that called porins na nagagamit natin for the entry and exit of materials needed for cellular respiration. So yan po. Next naman is the inner mitochondrial membrane. Unfortunately, this inner mitochondrial membrane is totally different sa ating outer mitochondrial membrane. Kung ang ating outer membrane, it's very porous, madaling makadaloy dyan yung mga molecules, yung inner mitochondrial membrane natin here, itong nililinyan ko ngayon ng ating laser pointer, it's highly impermeable. Napakahirap dumaan sa structure na yan. So kailangan mo ng specific process na i-discuss natin maya-maya para maisagawa yung sinasabi nating yung mga process na yun, yung pagiging highly impermeable ng ating inner mitochondrial membrane. Aside from that one, this inner membrane contains folds, mga tupi-tupi, na tinatawag nating cristae. Kapag isa, cristae. Kapag marami, crista. So yan, babalikan natin yung structure na yan. Yung mga folds na yan, yung mga folds na yan, these are called cristae. Yung mga cristae natin. And actually, ang main purpose ng cristae na to it's actually increasing the surface area kung saan pwedeng maganap yung cellular respiration na yan. So pag mas marami tayong folds, mas marami tayong surface area for the specific sets of proteins para paganahin paganahin yung latter part ng ating cellular respiration. So this, aside from that one, this inner membrane na to contains the necessary proteins and substances required for aerobic respiration na i-discuss natin maya-maya. So kitang-kita na kagad natin yung pinagkaiba ng outer membrane at inner membrane. Yung outer membrane, though they're both containing phospholipid membrane, yung ating outer membrane, it's very porous. Yung inner membrane, very protein-rich, and it's highly impermeable. It's highly folded also. Aside from that one, the inner membrane encloses the matrix that contains the proteins and its own genetic material called mitochondrial DNA or mtDNA. Sa totoo lang, itong mtDNA is the only DNA na naipapamana ng ating nanay sa ating mga anak niya. Bakit? Kasi kung babalikan natin yung fertilization process nung ginawa tayo, yung mitochondria ng sperm cell ay hindi nakakapasok ng buong buo sa ating zygote na mapo-form. So ibig sabihin, yung mitochondria na available na lang para sa developing zygote natin or the developing individual will always be coming from our mother. So this is one of the first inheritance na nakuha natin sa ating mga nanay, yung mitochondrial DNA. Actually, sa biotechnology, nagagamit na ang mitochondrial DNA para ma-test natin or ma-check natin yung family tree. Kaya nalaman ng mga scientists natin na ang first human beings came from Africa because of this mitochondrial DNA. Tinrace nilang mabuti yung mitochondrial DNA niya kasi nga, it's almost unbroken. Tuloy-tuloy lang siya if you go back in time. So ganyan po katindi yung pamana sa atin na mitochondrial DNA. So this mitochondrial DNA is also unlike the typical DNA na nasa nucleus natin. It's circular, just like bacterial DNA. So dyan pa lang may clue na bakit ka bilugan ito, bakit ka circular itong mitochondrial DNA. Pero yung linear DNA natin sa nucleus, it's a linear, or the DNA inside the nucleus is linear. So dyan pa lang makikita natin na magkaiba. There is really a possibility na baka nga dating bacteria ang mitochondrion. So let's have a review. Mitochondrion is a one-membraned large organelle with its own set of DNA. So please use the comment section. Please key in your answer. Mitochondrion is a one-membrane large organelle with its own set of DNA. Yan. Yan, mukhang pare-pareho kayo ng sagot Ang tamang sagot dito is, before I reveal the answer, sino pwede mag-share ng sagot nila? Bakit naging mali yung statement dito? Ano yung part dito ng ating statement na nagpamali sa ating binigay na statement? Mitochondrion is a one-membrane large organelle with its own set of DNA. Aling statement or aling part ng ating sentence yung nagpamali dito? Please use the comment section para masabi natin alin dito yung nagpamali sa ating statement. Ayan, may mga nagsagot na. So, ayan, tama po si Isaiah at si Jamil. Tama po na double membrane po kasi ang mitochondrion. So tama po siya na large. That's true. Tama rin po siya na may sariling DNA ang mitochondrion, but ang nagpamali sa statement na to is it's one membrane. It should be two membrane or a double membrane. So tama po yung mga nagsagot na po sa ating comment section. Let's have another one. The cristae or folds inside the mitochondrion increases the surface area of its membrane for various metabolic processes. The cristae or folds inside the mitochondrion increases the surface area of its membrane for various metabolic processes. Yan, may mga nagsasagot na. Yan, thank you for still watching. Actually, mapipilitan talaga kayo manood dahil no choice kayo. Pero again, it's a voluntary. You can still watch this one once ang internet niyo ay okay na. Ayan, marami na nagsagot. The answer for this one, it's true. So yung mga folds sa loob ng ating mitochondria, if you're going to go back, it actually increases. Mas dumadama yung kakayahan, mas lumalakas yung kakayahan ng ating mitochondria kasi mas marami siyang space for proteins para isagawa itong mga metabolic processes na ito. So thank you for answering. Ayun, I still hope that you're still with me. We still have 1 hour to go. And I think we can discuss na rin siguro itong second part para makapagpahinga rin kayo. We will still mag-undergo na lang tayo ng review class by tomorrow through online class, through Google Meet para at least ma-review natin yung lessons natin. Ganun na lang po gagawin natin. Instead of having a live stream for the second part, we will just having a, ayun nga lang, may problem. Anyways, we will just discuss it later sa group chat natin. So let's have the cellular respiration for an overview. So cellular respiration, okay? So nandito na tayo sa main course ng ating discussion. So cellular respiration, harvesting energy from food molecules such as glucose, is in an aerobic condition is called cellular respiration. And when we say aerobic respiration or condition, it requires oxygen. Kaya nga di ba meron tayong aerobic exercise sa MAPE? Pag sinabi nating aerobic exercise, these are set of exercises that can help us breathe more para pumasok yung oxygen sa katawan natin. So, in this case, pag narinig yung word na aerobic sa biology, it means it needs oxygen. O magaganap lang siya kapag may oxygen na present sa ating system. So, it releases energy. So, ano nga ba itong cellular respiration na to? It releases energy from the breakdown of these substances and eventually creating a substance that stores energy, which is in this case, ATP. Okay? So maliwanag, napakasimple ng definition. We are breaking down a substance. In this case, glucose. Glucose ang madalas natin gagamitin sa discussion natin. And once na na-breakdown natin itong substance na to, itong glucose na to, we can create another substance that stores energy, which is in this case, ATP. So yun palang goal natin. Napakasimple ng cellular respiration. Decompose natin, chop-chopin natin si glucose, para makabuo tayo ng isang bagong molecule, at itong bagong molecule na ito will store energy, which is in this case our ATP. So this is the general chemical formula of our cellular respiration. So in this part, ito, let me use not highlighter, let me use a pen. Use violet na lang. So this one, yan, this one, yan. This violet, itong in-encircle ko ng violet, it's actually the reactant side, and we need glucose in the presence of oxygen. So yun yung main ingredient ng cellular respiration natin. This is a simplified version of our cellular respiration, wherein the glucose, with the help or with the presence of oxygen, can yield products like carbon dioxide, water, and energy that is actually stored as ATP. Sa totoo lang, sa isang glucose molecule, we can at least produce the maximum amount of 38. Some books will tell you 30, 32, 34, 36, 38, but ito yung maximum natin, 38. At least 30 to 38 ATPs ang pwede nating ma-form at the end of cellular respiration. And as you can see here, if you can notice sa ating product side, this carbon dioxide and water is actually being used by photosynthesis. So dito pa lang kitang-kita na natin yung koneksyon ng cellular respiration at photosynthesis with this simple chemical reaction. With the reaction of glucose in the presence of oxygen, through the help of the cellular respiration, you're going to get 6 CO2, 6 water molecules, and at least 38 ATP. So harvesting energy from glucose by cellular respiration is a cumulative function of 3 metabolic stages or simply metabolic pathways. So sabi natin, pag sinabi natin metabolic pathways, series of chemical reactions yan. Yung product ng isa will become the raw material for the next process. So we have 3 processes. We have the glycolysis. Yan, this one is your glycolysis. The next one is Krebs cycle. And the third one is oxidative phosphorylation. Okay? So yung oxidative phosphorylation natin will be performed through electron transport chain and chemiosmosis. So again, meron tayong 3 proseso sa loob ng cellular respiration. We have glycolysis, we have Krebs cycle, and we have oxidative phosphorylation. Okay? So yan po yung hihimay-himayin natin mamaya or sa part 2 ng ating online class. In a eukaryotic cell, 90% of ATP is generated by oxidative phosphorylation, and the remaining 10% is through substrate level phosphorylation. So, mapapansin natin sa ating diagram na to that the ATP that's being produced by glycolysis is through substrate level phosphorylation as well as in the citric acid cycle or Krebs cycle. But yung ATP na napoproduce sa oxidative phosphorylation, andito siya, it's 90%. So, majority ng ating, pag tinanong kayo, through what process is the majority of ATP being generated? The answer is oxidative phosphorylation because it accounts to at least 90% of the energy being produced ng ating cell. So, ano pinagkaiba ngayon ng oxidative at substrate level phosphorylation? Pag sinabi nating oxidative phosphorylation, it's the production of ATP using energy derived from the redox reaction of an electron transport chain. So, oxidative phosphorylation at the last stage ng chemical reaction natin or ang cellular respiration, nagaganap ito. Na kung saan yung mga energy carrier molecules natin, like this one, itong NADH and FADH2, will be used to transport or pump protons from one side of the membrane into the other side. Madidiscuss natin ng mas malaliman yan sa latter part ng ating discussion kasi itong mga energy carrier molecules sa itong NADH and FADH2 is the major player sa pag-produce ng mas maraming ATP. Okay? While, ito, another concept, nabanggit natin kanina yung sinasabi nating redox reaction. Let me highlight that one. So yung redox reaction, let me highlight. Ayan. Yung redox reaction na yan of an electron transport chain. So ano ba yung redox reaction na yan? So pag sinabi natin redox reaction, it's an oxidation-reduction reaction. Ulitin natin, oxidation-reduction reaction, or pwede naman baliktad yan, reduction-oxidation reaction. It occurs when a molecule loses an electron or na-oxidize siya, and when a molecule gains an electron, na-reduce siya. So, ibig sabihin, this redox reaction is present in ATP production and in photosynthesis. Virtually, halos lahat ng chemical reaction natin sa ating katawan, there will always be an paired oxidation and reduction process. There will always be a substance that will be oxidized, and there will always be a material or molecule that will be reduced. Pag sinabi nating oxidation, loss of an electron. Pag sinabi naman nating reduction, it's a gain of an electron. Madidiscuss natin ng mas malaliman yan once na diniscuss natin yung ibang parts ng ating reaction. So pag sinabi nating cellular respiration, substrate level phosphorylation, it's enzyme catalyzed. Yun palang kitang-kita na natin. Kanina, sa oxidative phosphorylation, wala tayong involved na enzyme. May mga proteins, yes, pero wala tayong involved na enzyme. Sa substrate level phosphorylation, meron siyang enzyme na kailangan. There will always be an enzyme involved para pagsamahin itong si ADP at itong ating phosphate groups. So there will be a direct transfer of a phosphate group to ADP from an intermediate substrate in a catabolism pathway. There is a question, what will happen po if a cell won't be able to perform this process? Very simple, mamamatay yung cell. Bakit? Kasi yung energy na mapoproduce, yung ATP na mapoproduce ng ating cellular respiration is the energy currency ng halos lahat ng cellular process na gaganap sa isang cell. So kung hindi niya gagawin itong cellular respiration na ito, mamamatay yung cell. Okay? Kasi wala siyang source ng energy. Diba? So, napaka-importante na matandaan ninyo na itong cellular respiration na to, it's a very integral part ng pag-survive ng isang cell because we are producing here energy. We are producing here ATP that is actually needed for almost virtually all cellular processes ng ating katawan. So, let's have a review. Substrate level phosphorylation is a reduction oxidation catalyzed formation of ATP or catalytic formation of ATP. True or false? Substrate level phosphorylation is reduction oxidation catalyzing the formation of ATP. Yeah, so let's see. What's the answer for this one? Substrate level phosphorylation is a redox reaction that catalyzes the formation of ATP. Substrate level phosphorylation is a redox reaction that catalyzes the formation of ATP. Please key in your answer sa ating comment section. Parang wala pa nagsasagot. Ayan, tingnan nyo, may nagsasagot na. Isang technique grade 8 once na nagsasagot kayo ng true or false, after you answer the true or false, you ask yourself, alin nga ba yung nagpatama at nagpamali sa statement na ito? Kasi doon pala matututunan nyo na kung ano yung concept na nakapaloob dyan. So once you answer true, bakit nga ba? Once you answer false, bakit nga ba? So yan, majority of you, we now have 5 students here who answered false. So the question here, the answer is false. Pero alin dyan na nagpamali sa ating statement? Substrate level phosphorylation is a redox reaction that catalyzes the formation of ATP. There is a one phrase on that sentence that make this sentence wrong. Aling part ng sentence na yan ang nagpamali sa ating statement? Aling part ng ating statement ang nagpamali sa statement na yan? Check natin, baka may magsagot sa ating comment section. Alin kaya dyan na nagpamali? Aling bahagi ng sentence natin ang nagpamali sa statement natin ngayon? A substrate level phosphorylation is a reduction oxidation for a reaction that catalyzes the formation of ATP. Yan, tingnan natin, baka may magsagot eh. Wait natin sa comment section if there will be one who will answer. Yeah, may mga nagsagot na. Hindi sila sure, but may question mark sa dulo. The answer for this one is, again, tama po kayo. Ayan, may nagbigay pa ng explanation. That's good. Tama po si Richard, si Isaiah, si Faith. Ang nagpamali sa statement na yan is yung word na reduction, oxidation, or redox. Kasi ang substrate level, it's an enzyme catalyzed formation of ATP. Kung babalikan natin kanina, ito may enzyme siyang involved. So yun po ang pinagkaiba nila kanina. Yan. So tama po yung mga sagot niyo kay Keisha, kay Joshelle. It's an enzyme level or enzyme catalyzed formation of ATP. So, I think this is just an overview. Check lang natin. Ayan. Hanggang dito lang tayo sa step 3 na to. Overview lang tayo. So, let's have a quick overview para at least may idea na kayo na ba yung magaganap sa ating cellular respiration. Ihanda po natin yung sarili natin dahil once na after this overview, mas magugulantang na lang kayo sa mga makikita nyo sa ating, hindi ko sa tinatakot, nire-ready ko lang kayo kasi this one will be a very confusing, very tricky topic. So again, sabi ko nga po may 3 steps yung ating cellular respiration. We have the glycolysis. It harvests chemical energy from glucose molecule to form pyruvate. So that's the goal of the first process. Okay? Sorry, sandali lang po Let me exit. Sandali lang po. Ayan, so balikan lang natin. So pag sinabi natin glycolysis, it harvests chemical energy from glucose to form pyruvate. So yun yung main product ng glycolysis natin. We have glucose here, the raw material, and you end up with pyruvate. So i-split lang natin yung glucose natin yan to form pyruvate. So that's the main idea here. We are just going to split pyruvate molecule or glucose to form pyruvate. And this pyruvate molecule will enter the mitochondrion. So ito ang papasok sa mitochondrion natin, itong pyruvate molecule na ito, para siya ay magkaroon ng complete oxidation at ma-produce natin yung mga other necessary products ng ating cellular respiration. Okay, so maliwanag tayo dyan So sa glycolysis, we're just splitting up glucose to form pyruvate molecule which will eventually enter sa ating mitochondrion to perform Krebs cycle. Krebs cycle here involves the oxidation of various organic molecules generating NADH and FADH2. As you can see here, we're also going to produce ATP and these energy carrier molecules NADH and FADH2. So titingnan natin mamaya. Sa diagram na to, bilog lang yung Krebs cycle na ito eh. Pero mamaya, there's so many steps sa Krebs cycle. Itong glycolysis na to, isang linya lang siya. Papasok po sa mitochondria, ibig sabihin sa labas po ng using this diagram, it's very clear on this diagram. At nabanggit ko na rin siya kanina that the glycolysis will be performed sa labas ng mitochondrion. So kapag tinanong kayo, in the near future, lahat ba ng proseso ng cellular respiration ay nagaganap sa sa mitochondrion? The answer is no. Because the first process, glycolysis, will only happen outside mitochondrion. So yun po, maliwanag po tayo dyan. So yan po yung Krebs cycle natin. So it's almost 8 to 10 steps process to produce ATP and high energy molecules NADH and FADH2. Later, kikilalanin na natin mamaya sino ba yung NADH at FADH2 na dinidiscuss natin ng paulit-ulit. And last step, step number 3, electrons from NADH and FADH2 will move through an electron transport chain transferring protons needed for ATP production through chemiosmosis. So yan po yung i-discuss na huling-huli natin. And as you can see here, dito magaganap yung bulk ng ating energy production sa step 3. Question, sa lahat po ng process, so kakasabi ko lang po kanina na yung yung glycolysis ay nagaganap po sa cytoplasm. The rest inside the mitochondrion. It's very clear on my statement earlier that the glycolysis will be the only part ng ating cellular respiration that will happen outside the mitochondrion. But the remaining steps 2 and 3 will happen inside the mitochondrion. Ulitin ko po sa labas ng mitochondrion, sa cytoplasm, magaganap si glycolysis. Si step 2 at 3 ay magaganap na sa loob ng ating mitochondrion. So this ends our part 1 ng ating discussion. I will just post details ng part 2 natin mamaya kasi nabalitaan ko po na magkakaroon po ng online observation kayo sa math and I also want na maka-attend kayo doon na walang iniintindi na ibang subject. Kaya I will just post a reminder mamaya or announcement sa ating GC. Okay? So this ends our discussion. So itong steps 1, 2, at 3 ang magiging focus ng ating part 2. So maghanda po tayo regarding this discussion. Again, wala pong magsasagot pa sa bagay, wala pa naman pong ina-upload na activity sheets para sa lesson 1. So wala pa naman nagsasagot. Pero I just hope na nakapagsagot na kayo ng pre-test. Ang deadline ng pre-test natin will be November 26, Friday next week, 12 noon. Okay? So I will now stop my presentation. I will go back to my ayan. So I went back na sa ating platform, sa ating StreamYard platform at sa ating YouTube. I stopped presenting na because that is our part 1 ng ating presentation, ng ating discussion for this morning. So we discussed 8, ayan, saan po ba gawa si cytoplasm? Cytoplasm, na-discuss ko na siya ng first grading period. Cellular structure last part. Cytoplasm is the semi-solid structure inside our cell wherein all the organelles are floating kung saan dun sila nakasituate. Okay. It's mostly water. It's mostly water. Okay, so I will just post later sa ating GC kung ano po yung mangyayari sa part 2 natin. Okay, so I hope you have now a good grasp of our topic regarding metabolism for our first topic, metabolism, ATP, and mitochondrion. Diniscuss na rin po natin yung overview ng cellular respiration para at least later or sa near future, yung sa part 2 natin, is at least meron na kayong idea kung ano magaganap sa cellular respiration natin na yan. So again, the reminders or announcement will be posted sa ating group chat later. So you can now, I will now stop my broadcast. So again, goodbye grade 8, Mendel and Darwin. See you later.